Hello everyone. I finished Never Trust the Sorcerer by L.R. Barrett-Durham and I wanted to review it for you today. Since this is my first review, I'm going to let you know I'm borrowing the rubric that Travis McBee has used in his review videos. I'm going to be, judging everything the way I would, but it's a good rubric to follow. It hits all the good points, so I wanted to borrow it. So let's get into the review. The premise of the book is that the planet here, Remus, there's a sorcerer who wants to take over the world, and he's already tried it once and he failed, and while he's going about trying to get his hands back on the weapon of mass destruction that he was going to use, he is also seeking revenge on the entire family of the people who took the weapon from him in the first place. So I'm going to give it 5 stars for the premise. Let's move on to world building. Barrett-Durham has a very good idea of the world that she's setting up. She does use a lot of your typical fantasy creatures, orcs, goblins, giants, but what fantasy writer doesn't? She does have a very good idea of the world that she's built. The cultures are very distinct. And then it has a good history to it too, nice weight to it. So I'm going to give that 5 stars as well. Now let's move on to a Machina. This is where I started having a few little problems with the book. You have, of course, an ultimate weapon that's been there for centuries, and people just keep looking for it and hiding it, finding it, and back and forth. And it's one of those standard fantasy tropes that gives me a little bit of trouble with the genre. That's why I tend to stick more with science fiction myself. And then there's the magic. It does have limits to it, and it's based on the character's strength. They're so strong, they have a certain amount of training, they can do this much magic before they give out, and back and forth. But there are a couple of times, particularly toward the end, and I'm going to talk about this more when we get to the ending, but it's almost like the limits don't really matter. That did bother me a little bit. But at the same time, it's nothing that could have stopped the story 20 pages in. And it's not just something that's there and they're completely ignoring it just for the sake of having the story go on, like, say the Eagles and Lord of the Rings. Now let's go on to writing. A few of the names, particularly early on into the book, had me giggling a little bit. And then there are certain phrases that will jump out at you and almost threw me out of the story a couple of times. Particularly repetitions of this day and this night. And it may just be a personal thing for me, but it didn't read quite true. But at the same time, it was used pretty much exclusively within dialogue. So it may have actually been part of her world building for those particular cultures. It's hard to tell though, because it's used by 2 or 3 different species. I'm not sure. It may be a language tick she meant to add in, or it may be one of the little writing ticks that we all tend to have. And it can take a while to really learn how to deal with those, to really spot them. And this is her first novel. Well, it was her first novel. It's been out for quite a few years now. So for writing, I'm going to give that 4 stars. Now let's go on to our characters. Names I've already mentioned before. One such as Bernhilda and Jareth seem to be obvious references to pulp culture. And then there's Gnarl Naughty Trunk. And while it had me giggling at first, as you get on into the story, it becomes clear that it's actually pretty well in line with the dwarf culture that she has set up. So I'm going to mark that one off. Now, here's where my biggest problem with a lot of the book is in the romantic relationships. They just seem to move a little fast. You have one character that within 48 hours of meeting someone, even though he has been socially isolated, still it seems a little off that you would be professing love within 48 hours of meeting somebody. And beyond that, later on in the book, you have an instance of a character falling in love. And it seems almost to go against his character. And yet here he is suddenly professing love, and it feels like it comes out of nowhere. It almost reads like it was a late addition to the plot. She saw that she needed a foil for another character, and so she added in this romance. And It just needed a little more tweaking and editing. Once again, this is Barrett-Durham's first novel. It may come down to that. But I can only give the characterizations 3 stars. Even though other times the characters were really good, they had a good balance between their strengths and their weaknesses, their personalities and the circumstances around them flowed logically one from the other to how they reacted. But I can still only give this 3 stars because of the issues with the romantic plot lines. For the pacing, there was some minor redundancy. It's all very logical. Meeting different characters, you have to fill them in on what's going on and the plan and all of that. And it could have been trimmed down in edits, but it doesn't slow the plot down too awfully much. And like I said, it is completely logical. So I'm going to give the pacing 4 stars because otherwise it was spot on. Now let's move on to the ending. Overall, it was really good. It pays off. All the plots and subplots get tied in. It leaves you with a solid ending. If you were to stop with this book, you would be left without many questions and you would be completely satisfied. But it also does leave some things not completely answered so that it can lead into other stories. There is a little bit of issue with 2 points. With at one, something that was stated repeatedly to be impossible occurred. I wanted a little bit more explanation into that, if it was going to actually happen for it to really be believable. And then with another one, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I'll tell you this. It occurred in the epilogue. It actually occurred in just the last couple of paragraphs of the epilogue. And not only did it make it seem like all the limits we had been given up to that point for magic just were blown out the window, but it also undercut a lot of the impact of the climax. I'm hoping that Barrett-Durham was setting up something even bigger to happen in other books. I haven't read them yet. This is the only one of her books I've read so far. And because of that, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and give the ending 4 stars. And that brings me to my overall rating for the book, which I would have to say is a solid 4 stars. It's not perfect by any means, but what book is? But it is a very enjoyable fantasy romp. It's adventure with a little bit of romance thrown in, a good strong female protagonist. If you enjoy those things, I would very much recommend going and picking up and giving it a read. I will include links below to where you can find more of Barrett-Durham's work and where you can find copies of Never Trust the Sorcerer. If you enjoyed today's review and you want to see me review other books, please give me suggestions down below for what you would like to see. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye.